Hello, and thanks so much for joining us. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America, and my guest today is Deborah Santana, award-winning activist, philanthropist, and author of the riveting new memoir, Loving the Fire, Choosing Me, Finding Freedom. And in this deeply personal book, Deborah takes us on a journey through self-discovery, love, resilience, and the path to finding her voice and also her power, which none of us ever disputed, Deborah Santana. Thank you so much. It's so much fun. I get to interview one of my favorite people on the planet. So thanks for being a guest again here on Black America.
Thank you, Carol. You're the best.
As well as a source of inspiration and everything good, following you on your blog and, your posts. It really, you always give a great deal of inspiration to everyone. But now that you've got in a book, and as I was asking you earlier, we want all of the details. How did you manage to get so much information to share and advice to share from one life that we look at your life and we say, oh, it's perfect?
Exactly. A false statement there. But so after I finished Space Between the Stars, my memoir that I published 20 years ago, if you can believe it.
Right?
So I'm a journal keeper because otherwise I wouldn't remember all these details. So I keep journals, not every day, but I follow my own life so that I can remember what I've done. And I really started writing this book when I finished Space Between the Stars. But I've been through many iterations, many editions. I have 300 pages on the floor, and this is Loving the Fire.
Well, that'll be the next version, right? The next book is already written, and it's somewhere, but you don't crumple your pages, do you? You just let them fall silently for future use. The book, I think, as I was telling you, is timely, not just for women, by the way, for everybody, because the world has gone in so many ways slightly nuts. How do you find grounding when every single day you're under assault by one thing or another? But for you, this came through removing yourself from a partnership that had defined you for over 30 years.
I begin my book with my family, my ancestors, my mother and father, and I talk about how I grew up. Because I think that as this administration, as this country tries to remove Black history and tries to remove the struggles of the people who built this nation, it is really important to me to tell my family story. And so my Black ancestors are from Louisiana, and my dad, Saunders King, and my grandparents started a church, and they left the South because of the caste system. So that is how I wanted to start this book. And then also my Irish, English, Scottish ancestry on my mother, Jo Francis's side. And I want to talk about that too. I wanted to say, look, this is a normal family. This is how I grew up. Look at the strength of these people who brought me life. And then I go into the strength that I had to leave the marriage. But it really started with my ancestors.
Yeah, and I love the photograph of your mother and father. That is just so, your dad was a musician, so you had that in your life as well. But you came from a happy, grounded background, which so many of us don't, but you did. So talk about that, the strength that you found from that.
I did, and the world, I grew up in the 60s. I was born in the 50s, but grew up in the 60s when the civil rights movement, I feel like everything is exactly the same. So we grew up in the time of being denied access to education, being denied access to anything that was good in life. And even though I lived in San Francisco, which was more liberal, it was still the same environment. And so growing up with a loving home where the world could be burning as it is now, and in our home we had safety and love and security and strength. So that is really my foundation.
Right, an incredible, and we've talked about this before in your previous appearances, and you, in fact, when we were down with you at the Smithsonian, the African American Museum that you helped create in a very large part. Speak about that briefly before we move on. I mean, being a part of that in terms of not erasing history, but in fact enhancing it.
Yes, it's been my honor to be a part of the Smithsonian for, gosh, since 2014. And when the National Museum of African American History and Culture was being built, I was so privileged to be a founding donor and to get to know Director Lonnie Bunch, who was just then at NMAC, but now is the head of he's the secretary, head of all the Smithsonian organization. And to come up and watch that this museum has made such an impact on the country, and visitors just clamoring to get in the doors because people want to know the true history of America.
They want to know the true history, but Lonnie Bunch is under some pressure, to edit exhibits and perhaps change administration, the people who work for him and all. I mean, how do you feel about the pressure that the Smithsonian is under now?
Well, I am so grateful Lonnie is the bulwark that he is and the brilliant man that he is, but all institutions are under attack. And I'm a part of the Courage Museum in San Francisco, which we're just building, and it hopefully will open next year. And the whole premise of the Courage Museum is to eradicate violence from our society and to tell the stories of people who have suffered violence and survived and thrived. And that all institutions that want to help people seem to be under attack.
Even the Courage Museum?
Even the Courage Museum.
What, they don't want you to talk about what it takes and who the people were who exhibited courage? Or you...
It's on public land. It's on the Presidio.
So you are and always have been, a leader in sorting these things out for us and actually showing the way. So I thank you for for that. So getting back to the book, because you 32 years in. Well, yeah.
34.
34, okay, we'll give it its full due. And then it seems as if like you were getting to the point, it didn't happen like just one day, that's it, I'm done. But you were gradually coming to realize that you were not fulfilled in the relationship, but a very public relationship.
Yes, so I loved the life of being a mom. And that was part of what Carlos and I had together. We had our family, but we were married 10 years before we had our children. So I basically came up, because I was 22 when we got married, right. So I came up supporting this institution of music, which is a beautiful, being on the road, hearing the band play, being involved with the musicians, and then becoming involved in the management of the organization as COO and vice president. I really didn't think about what I was missing. I was just in this to support this institution, sort of. But I realized that you can't live someone else's life. And that became part of I always took writing courses, I took Spanish language, I always edified myself. And then when I had the children, of course, I had that life. But within myself, my values were changing. I couldn't really support someone else's life more than I could support my own.
Right. Well, I find the book helpful for people if they're leaving or even if they're staying in a long-term relationship that doesn't quite fulfill them. This is the way to get out, in a sense, or to actually find yourself. And so go through some of the things that you did. I know that you've meditated since you were, a kid, right? This has been a part of your daily life.
Yes. Well, really, I have something at the end of my book, which is how to walk through fire.
And we're going to go through those steps.
But one of the first things I think people have to acknowledge is you have to be in tune with yourself and feel what you feel. We rush so much every day, and I have always made time every morning to sit in my meditation for 20 minutes every morning, sometimes longer. But then I check in with myself, and I allow the essence of who I am to rise, and I actually search for what I need to do that day. So I have an internal existence that drives my life, and that always tells me how I'm feeling, what I'm doing, who am I interacting with, what serves me, what serves humanity, and what I don't need to do anymore.
Oh, really? And there's the question, right? What do I not need to do anymore? And so take us through that step when you answered that question for yourself.
Well, I think the biggest thing for me at the time in terms of the marriage was I don't need to compromise who I am as a woman, and I want to feel the love and devotion that I think I deserve.
And that was it.
It's pretty basic.
Right.
Because I could have kept going.
You could have. Yeah, you could have done it endlessly because there were so many other pieces, the business. So, well, talk to us about like shedding Carlos and then shedding your job. And then, I mean, of course, you have your children. It was so fulfilling. Great kids.
Yes.
But then separating from that.
Yeah, it's part of what you have to do in life, I think, over and over again is let go and release the past. And I had a very strong sense that I could do that because of my meditation and because I wanted to feel the essence of who I was. So I was able to shed Carlos much more easily than I was the business. I was attached to those musicians and the staff and everything that I had sort of built because we went on our own after many years of being managed by other people. So I had to let go and trust that all those things I had put in place would continue, or else I had to let go and let them be who they were. And one of the things I say in the book is I had to release Carlos to the universe and let him be who he was.
Right, exactly. But I love that, Carlos was one thing, but the business was another.
Yeah, that was kind of like another baby.
I know, but a really keen realization to have, And also I could see you saying, well, my parents had this long, wonderful relationship. This could go on forever too, but then, that's not what was meant for you.
That's right.
And so the things that replaced the things that that was going on, talk to us about replacing all of those things so that you felt fulfilled and where you should be.
And I didn't really replace them. I think one of the reasons I said loving the fire is I walked through that. That was a fire to leave everything that I had been so attached to for 34 years. And in leaving it, I have sort of like I use this analogy of a forest fire. Everything gets burned. Everything is just crisped. And people have a hard time thinking, is this going to come back? And sure enough, after a few months, after a year, all the little green shoots start coming up. There's a new forest that starts building. So that's really what I did. I stripped myself down to this place of, okay, who am I now that I don't have all of these other identities that I've had for so long? And I immediately started going to yoga any time of the day or night. And I went to workshops. I went to Taos and worked with Natalie Goldberg. I immediately went back and got my master's degree. So I had all this time to focus on the things that I hadn't done.
Wow, that was a lot, so you were right. And you journal every day too, as you said, keeping track of your life. I mean, that's the story. If we don't write it down in a way or record it in some way, so much of it evaporates.
Yes.
Because your book is excellent in the details that you were then able to, to relay. So now the pieces of you're writing, you have this book, but you're major involved in all kinds of things in the world. Talk to us about how you decided to do those things.
Well, I've been involved with many organizations for many years. And when I started Do a Little in 2008, after my divorce, it was on the phrase that Archbishop Tutu said, do your little bit of good wherever you are. It's those little bits put together that will overwhelm our world. And I had a close relationship with the Arch. I was so fortunate to travel to South Africa with Artists for New South Africa, and we worked with him for many years. So I had mentors in the world who already were showing me how to live, how to fight for human rights for everybody.
And when we first met, many years ago, you were engaged with Daraja. So talk to us about the girls' school.
Yes,
right?
And so Daraja.
Look at that smile.
Yes, those girls are incredible. So Daraja, in 2010, I first traveled to Kenya to visit the school. It's a free boarding school for girls who would not be able to attend school if they didn't have a free education. And at that time, there were 26 students. And that was in 2010. Now there are 297 students.
Wow,
They've built a new
incredible.
campus. They've expanded who their supporters are, and these girls are flourishing. They're the girls who were there when I was there, they're now nurses and pilots and medical assistants and working in the environment, and just stunning lives.
Well, what a fantastic contribution that will actually enhance that entire country. You know, Africa seemed to be on your mind in terms of finding places to do things.
You know, I don't know that it's on my mind. I want to be a part of anything that's adding health and growth and light to people's lives. And I'm fortunate that through Artists for New South Africa, I was able to work in South Africa, do work, and then in Kenya. But I really support women and girls wherever they are, because anyone who is marginalized by any society, I want to get in there and pump them up.
Right. Great. And you've given them this book, you know, so that if you ever get stuck, whatever, this is what you need to do to move on. And, you know, speaking of girls and women, you're now part of, you know, establishing women's history in the Smithsonian. Talk to us about that.
The Women's History Museum is a small part. I was serving on their council for a while,
right?
But I'm not doing that anymore, although I'm still supportive of the museum. I'm actually much more involved with the Undersecretary of Education, Dr. Monique Chisholm. And I have 6 college students that I bring into a mentorship every summer to work in the Smithsonian. So that's kind of my passion right now. And I'm still on the advisory council for NAMAC. So I'm involved with the Smithsonian big time.
Well, talk to us about NAMAC, you know, because important work being done there.
Yes. You know, the National Museum of African American History and Culture is just such a foundation of my life. And I love serving on the advisory council with all these brilliant board members. And it's making its mark. The exhibitions there are really a slice of life showing how African Americans have contributed and continue to contribute to our country.
Right. And now personally, because one of the things you kept were the kids, you know, I mean, talk to us about that and how that fills out your life in addition to all of the good works that you're doing in the world.
My 3 children. So Salvador, Stella, and Angelica Faith, they're all beautiful human beings, and they're all activists, sort of like I am, and they all have different projects. Salvador's pretty much a full-time musician, and he still plays with his dad in Vegas. He's a beautiful keyboardist. And Stella is also a producer, director, and she does her own music. And she has 2 little ones and just had a baby girl about 6 weeks ago.
Oh, congratulations.
So,
That's great.
You. And then Angelica Faith is here on the East Coast, and she's a phenomenal writer and convener. She's going to start a nonprofit called Library for Good, which will probably house nothing but banned books.
Incredible. I don't know whether your book is I don't think it's going to be banned, you know?
I don't think so.
I mean, but almost everything else is, you know? I mean, as you move through this, I mean, even writing the book, you know, that share with us your technique of how you actually became I know this is not your first book, but so you've been down this road before, but this is very personal. You know, was there a point where you thought, oh, I can't do this, I'm not doing this, I can't finish it? Or is it overall what you would say a 20-year process?
I think the final inspiration to finish this book was I really wanted my children to know who I was apart from being with their dad. And they know some of the work that I do, but I love the fact that I could put in all of these different aspects of myself, like being honored by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Right. My daughters were there for that event, but that was really significant. And then going to South Africa, and then 2 of my children were there. But then all of the things I've done to claim myself and to be involved with the world. I wanted my children to see examples of my life.
And I noticed that one of the chapters begins with, you know, such a phrase of when the heart breaks, you know, open, there is the opportunity for love. So talk to us about that.
Well, Salvador says vulnerability is a superpower. And I love that because people who have read this memoir, it's only been out for a little bit, but they say, we can't believe how vulnerable and open and honest you were. Because I'm trying not to talk about what went wrong or what other people did to hurt me. I'm talking about, what did I learn from this experience? What did I learn from my marriage? What did I learn from my divorce? What did I learn from this country being constantly trying to shut down people of color? So I talk about those things. How did I maneuver through life's challenges, and what did I choose to focus on to continue my life in a positive way?
Right, and you certainly have, and a lot of that strength comes from the women in your family who preceded you. Tell us about that, those connections.
Yes, well, I talk about my grandmother, Sarah Anna Celestine King, who, with my grandfather, Judge King, my African-American side, started a church. And when they moved to Oroville, California, they were worshiping, and the way the black church worships is with tambourines and singing and clapping, and the white ranchers in the area didn't like that. So they rode their horses by one day and shot through the window and shot my grandmother in the stomach. And, this is resilience. You get up and you we're not moving this church. We're going to keep praising and worshiping God in our way. And yet they did eventually move the church to Oakland, and the church just celebrated 100 years.
Oh my goodness, that's great. Now, and how often do you get to that church?
I don't get there very often. I live in LA now, and it's in the Bay Area.
Right.
Yes.
But to have that in your history is really something. Well, your children certainly have an enormously useful tool for moving along ahead. What are you wishing for them as you write this book, letting them know what you've gone through in the midst of our country being in such turmoil? What do you expect and want for those three children of yours, and now these grandchildren that are coming along?
Yeah, I wish for them to have a strong community of like-minded people who believe in freedom and will fight for justice. And I want them to have peace and love in their lives. And I want them to do their little bit of good wherever they are.
A little bit of good, Julia, that's great. All right, so how to walk through fire. I mean, in this image of, if you're making a change, more than likely, as you describe it, the forest is burning to the ground, right? Everything that you know, perhaps love or hate, is somehow being destroyed. And you've given, at the end of the book, how to walk through the fire. The first is to acknowledge what's happened.
Yes. So and I can just talk about it if you want. Yeah.
All right.
So the first thing I always ask people, and I know it's really difficult, but I really want people to learn how to be with themselves, to learn to meditate, to learn how to be in the silence. I don't care if it's 5 minutes every day, but to be in that quiet of just you gives you so much information about yourself. So the first thing I did was I acknowledged my life was out of alignment. My soul wasn't at peace. And then I did some journaling, and I wrote, what was I feeling? You don't have to have the answers. You just write it down, and it will come out of you. And then I thought about what I needed to move forward. And one of the things was I had to move away from people who were toxic to my life.
Well, first you had to identify, which in the book is very helpful as well.
Yes.
You may not even know who's causing the most damage to you unless you really go through the list in a way and say, what's being given to me?
And it's intuitive. We can really feel if we take the time. We know. And so then after you identify those things, I move away from those people who are toxic. And then I know who's adding light and life to my life. And I bring them closer. And for myself, I think at that time, there were a few friends that I could really count on, who I could really share what I was going through. And I also started going to Al-Anon, which was introduced to me by Barbara Rick.
A mutual friend of ours, right?
Because I needed to focus on myself, not what someone else had done to me or not what had failed. I wanted to focus on what was my part in all of this unraveling. And so I brought the people who brought more light to my life closer. And then I started going out and finding like-minded places where I could be of service. And that's a big part of life for me, to be of service. How can I be helpful to other people?
Right. Well, and I like this too, because you don't just say sit and meditate and journal and then forget about it. It's like, then what are you going to actually do?
Right.
You know, to make the world a better place, or your whatever. And how hard is that, though? For you, it was easy because you're sought after. You know, people are always calling you, Deborah Santana, can you help us with this, that, and the other? But, you know, for other people, it's not so, they're not wanted.
Well, I think, though, especially in divorce, people make choices. And so there were many people who did not choose me. They chose, it's like people think they have to take sides. But I was able, because of my meditation, to be alone sometimes and to sit in the silence, and also to not have the same network. My whole network changed. But I have so many wonderful organizations to be involved with. So I just went on. And, you know, the thing is, it's okay for life to change.
Wow, now there's a statement, you know, from Deborah Santana. It's okay for life to change. No, we want it to stay the same, even if it's miserable. That's what I hear people in the audience saying. No, we're not giving it up. And I don't know who's toxic in my life, and I don't know how to let them go. How did you do that? You just stop returning calls, or, you know, how do you let somebody who's toxic in your life go?
I think you do. You just move away by not responding. And I really think it's a point of connection. Other people sense that the connection might be over too. And I think without malice and being mad at someone, it's okay to accept that it's changed. This whole relationship has changed now.
Right, right. Well, the book is wonderful, and I'm so glad that you're sharing your experiences with everyone around the globe, because you're a global presence, not just fixing what's wrong here in the United States, but what's wrong globally. That you're sharing it. Are you hopeful?
I'm hopeful, yes, because I believe that life is bigger than this tinsel creation of politics and whatever is out there. Life is much deeper. But I'm also hopeful because I think there are so many good people in the world. And I think there are so many people who really want good for others. And it's important I have a real sense of relationship with indigeneity, so I want to stay close to the ground. I want to stay close to the indigenous wisdom.
Thank you so much for being with us. I mean, you share so much of yourself and your life and your wisdom and your courage, and we appreciate all of that. Deborah Santana, thank you for being with us. Loving the Fire, Choosing Me, and Finding Freedom. You could do it too. And that is it for us at this time. Thank you for joining us. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America. We'll see you the next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.